How big of kahunas must a person have to be an NFL referee? Well, today we're going to find out from our guest, Mr. Walt Coleman, who at the time of his retirement in 2018 was the longest running NFL referee in history. This is big money on a big stage with big egos, and your word as the referee is the final word. Like it or lump it. The next day, everybody's talking about it, and everybody must live with your decisions. And live with it is what our guest did for 30 years. The guts, the glory, and the criticism. On top of that abnormal career choice, Walt is the fifth generation to run Coleman Dairy in Little Rock, Arkansas. In 2001, his family business was listed in Family Business magazine as the United States' 75th oldest family-run business, having been founded in 1862. In 2007, Coleman Dairy became a division of Hiland Dairy. Today, we're going to talk about both sides of the coin, Coleman Dairy, a.k.a. Hiland Dairy, and about the National Football League and what it's like to be standing on one of the world's biggest stages making million-dollar decisions. We're going to talk about rules and changes in the game, illegal contact, pass interference, targeting, and defensive holding penalties. And the call that our guest, Mr. Walt Coleman, is most famous for, the tuck rule that he used in the 2002 Super Bowl game. It is with great pleasure I welcome to the table the entrepreneur and retired NFL referee, Mr. Walt Coleman. Hey, Walt.
Hi.
So you're a nice guy. I thought referees had to be mean.
Not necessarily. I mean, sometimes it helps to be a little,
cocky.
Yeah, maybe. But, it's like anything. We all have different personalities. And in the officiating area, we had all kinds of different personalities as referees, just like you have different personalities as coaches. Coaches don't all have the same personalities. It doesn't take one particular personality to be successful.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
You can look at it. Some of them are angry, and some of them aren't. Andy Reid, they won the Super Bowl. He's very laid back. Tony Dungy, very laid back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bill Cowher, he was. So you can be successful with any type of personality. Same thing as far as at the referee position in the National Football League. You have a nice demeanor
for a 30-year NFL referee with those enormous guys and enormous egos. But before we get into the games and we start talking about that, we're going to talk about Coleman Dairy. But also, did you sleep before a game?
Yes. I slept better before the game than I did after the game.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
We're going to find out what replay that keeps you up at night. Is there one? Is it the tuck call?
Well, that's the call that I'm most known for. Mm-hmm. But I got it right. So
you did. That's right.
For me, and probably like most people, I remember the ones I messed up as opposed to the ones that I got right.
Nobody's perfect, and you're on such a big stage with such big money at stake, and there's nobody that gets everything right 100% of the time. Never.
No, we're expected to be perfect and get better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's expected of those guys that wear the striped shirts.
Yeah. Number 65, that's you. Before we talk about your illustrious NFL career and all the players, owners, egos, and some of the calls you're famous for that I just mentioned, let's talk about the Coleman Dairy business. I'm fascinated by the legacy. It's so wholesome. It's like the flag business. Coleman Dairy milk is goes together with wholesomeness, just like flags go together with wholesomeness.
American pie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really do think about it. You give me a glass of cold milk and a slice of apple pie.
And an American flag.
And an American flag behind
Chocolate chip cookie, maybe.
Oh, there you go. So you were also, Coleman Dairy had a lot of sports philanthropy going. I think Buddy started that.
Yes.
So you think that's why you all have so much business?
I think that is one of the things that helped us survive when all the other family-owned businesses were going by the wayside, is our investment in the youth and the sports teams that we sponsored all over the state of Arkansas. It's fun to have somebody come up to me and say, I played on a Coleman Dairy Little League team or a Coleman Dairy Pony League team or a Coleman Dairy softball team. And I think our involvement in the community and doing those kind of things across the state made a huge difference in people being willing to buy our product as opposed to, because that's what it's about. I mean, if you don't sell anything, there's no way you're going to be able to afford to sponsor teams or do anything. So you have to have those consumers that are willing to pay for your product.
So do you think that's why your family has a legacy in football, is because of your sponsorships into sports?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. As we merged companies together, if you go way far back, a gentleman named Cliff Shaw came and became part of our company, and he was a well-known college and football and basketball official. He worked in NCAA Final Four.
Was he a mentor of yours?
He was a mentor. He was a mentor of my dad's. He was a mentor of my Uncle Boots's. I mean, he was the sales manager, became the sales manager at Coleman Dairy back in the 50s. But he was a well-known official across the country. If you're old enough to remember this, there was a play in a Cotton Bowl one year where a player came off the bench and tackled Dickie Magle when he was running for a touchdown in the Cotton Bowl game. And this player for Alabama came off the bench and tackled him. He was in the open running for a touchdown. And Cliff Shaw was the referee in this game. And so he had to make a decision what to do. And he awarded TCU a touchdown on this play, which it wasn't in the rule book. He didn't have the authority to do that, but that's what he did. The next year they put that in the rule book, but it's a famous play as far as, and so he was the sales manager of our company, and my Uncle Boots was involved in officiating. Then when my dad was involved in all kinds of sports. I mean, he coached 2 American Legion baseball teams in 57 and 59 that won the state championship. And he was involved in AAU boxing and track and so forth. So we've always been involved in sports. And my dad was a high school and college official. He was in the Southwest Conference for 26 years. He was official.
So there's a lot of legacies. There's a lot of legacies in your family.
Yeah, the dairy and the officiating are legacies in the family. So I followed in 2 different things as far as the family business as far as the dairy business, and the family deal as far as officiating. So, but I think all of that sure helped as far as your relationship with schools. Yeah, because a lot of you sell a lot of product to schools, and so we have good relationships with the schools, and
so your great is that 5 greats grandfather in 1862 founded Coleman Dairy, fleeing the Civil War. Yes. That's what I read on Wikipedia.
Yes.
So he had 2 milk cows. Where'd he come from? What state was he coming from?
He came from Chicago
with his 2 milk cows, and came down here right off Fush Dam Pike on Ashland University, and had 200 acres.
Oh,
maybe not even that many.
No, it was probably more than that, because we wound up with 100 and I think we had 155 acres is what we had as far as in our part of the family, and obviously it got divvied up some. Do you know how to say his name? Alethet.
That's it. We were trying so hard.
Even Google doesn't know how to say it.
No, there's not another Alethet in the world, I don't think.
Well, so I'm going to spell it Eleithet. Alethet.
Interesting. His son obviously took over the business, and he was delivering milk down on Main Street in Little Rock, and he got kicked in the head by his horse, and it killed him. And his son had to wind up taking over. That's something that happened in our family.
Kidding.
Yeah. But because you delivered back then, you delivered milk in a horse and wagon, and you had just a bucket that had milk in it, and you'd ladle the milk out of the bucket into. We when I got involved, we had home delivery. Well, we would deliver milk in a carton or a glass bottle. Well, back then, you ladled it out into a bucket that somebody had at their house.
That's so crazy.
So, it's like everything's you've come a long way in our business.
Well, I'll say it's
especially from a safety standpoint.
Yes.
Not getting kicked in the head anymore.
Yeah, that was an interesting, because people always, and even the NFL fans who want to give me a hard time, they say, you need to go back to milking your cows. But when I got involved in the business, we didn't have any dairy cows, because they sold the dairy herd back in the early 40s, and they used the money to put in processing equipment to start pasteurizing the milk. And my grandmother said, well, you're getting ready to mess everything up. You're going to screw up the product when you start pasteurizing it. But
interesting.
But we got involved at that point in packaging and processing the product. And so we would buy our product from all the local dairy farmers that were in Central Arkansas. And there were like 55 or 60 small dairy farms in the Central Arkansas area back then.
And are they contract farmers with you?
Well, that's the way it would have worked back then.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it moved on, they became part of a co-op. And so they would put all their milk into the co-op, and back then it was called AMPI, Associated Milk Producers Incorporated. And so we would buy our milk from them. They were just part of the co-op because, as Little Rock grew, all the dairy farms left. I mean, there weren't any. And
you had to pasteurize it for safety reasons. Because it's coming from so many different places that you don't know how these guys farm.
Well, the problem are things that would be in the milk as far as, if you go to a dairy farm, you got to worry about a lot of things. And it's against the law to sell raw milk in the state of Arkansas.
I was going to say culturally it changed, like the laws were changing and expectations were changing.
Yes. So it was something that we started, and obviously that made a huge difference as far as us being able to stay in the business, to be a processor and to process the milk and then package it and distribute it, in and around the state. So. Yeah.
So Annie Oakley show?
Oh yeah. That was a big.
I didn't know Annie Oakley was from Arkansas.
Yes, Gail Davis.
Yes, I did not know that.
Yeah, she grew up over by Pulaski Heights, just north of the Med Center up there. Her house where she grew up was basically right across the street from Pulaski Heights.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either until I was reading about it. So TV was brand new.
Right.
And one of your in-laws, I'm not in-laws, but...
my aunt.
Oh, okay.
My aunt...
It's her idea.
My aunt taught her dance, Gail Davis dance. Mm-hmm. And then when she became a big star, they came up with the idea of, when the Annie Oakley show came out, that we would be we would obviously sponsor the show as far as in the Central Arkansas area. And she was on the side of our milk cartons. We had her picture on the side of the carton, and Louise Lucan, who was our spokesperson for many, many, many years. I mean, everybody thought she was my mother, our mother, because she was the face. She was the face of Coleman Dairy.
Sure, yeah.
She came in my Uncle Boots' office. And said, "You need me to work for you." Whoa. And she convinced my Uncle Boots to hire her and so she became the person who, when somebody would move to town, well, she would go greet that person and deliver them and let them have, bring them some Coleman products. And so she was the greeter for Central Arkansas for us. And then she did all the TV advertising.
So she came up with the idea of getting Annie Oakley on being your spokesperson.
I think she was one. She's the one I think she was one of the ones that helped come up with the idea.
So you recently sold your business, or I don't know if you sold it, but you went in partnership with Hiland Dairy. It was a merger, and you went from making, 20 gallons a day of milk. I mean, it started off with, 200 milk cows to 200 gallons a day, and then it went to, with Coleman Dairy, 35,000 gallons of milk a day, I read online.
Well, we're doing 950,000 a week now.
Oh my gosh. That's just crazy to think about. So is it a merger, or did you?
No, we actually sold. We were in the same situation as most family dairy operations back then. The equipment is so expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to have refrigerated trucks. Mm-hmm. I mean, our product has got to be refrigerated, and the processing facilities, the equipment in the plant and all that, very expensive. And it got to the point where we just didn't have the capital to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So we looked for some place to go where we could continue the way we wanted to do business and protect our employees.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And which was very important to us because they're the ones that made us successful. I mean, and we were a family business, and we had all kinds of family people. I mean, second and third generation people who were working for us. I mean,
sounds familiar.
I know a lot of companies have nepotism laws, and I don't believe in nepotism laws, but, when you sell to somebody and that's what they have, then you have to deal with it. But anyway, so in 1995 is when we initially sold the first time to our dairy cooperative, because they needed some place to go with their milk, and so that we became part of them in 95. So we were part of the co-op for 3 years, and then the co-op sold and merged, and the federal government forced them to get rid of us because of antitrust reasons. So we became part of a holding company with the Turners in Memphis. They had a plant in Memphis and Fulton and Covington, Tennessee, and then our plant in Little Rock. And then they bought what used to be the Affiliated Foods plant out there on I-30. So we had 2 plants here in Little Rock. Our old plant there on Asher at Asher University, and then the Hiland plant, the Affiliated Foods plant that was on I-30. And so we had 2 plants, and it was obvious that we needed to do something.
So what was the reason that they pushed you out of the co-op? What did you say was the reason?
Well,
antitrust?
Yeah, the co-op merged with other co-ops in the middle part of the country, and the government said, the federal government said, that you have to divest yourself of this processing plant. You don't need to be in the processing business. That's going to eliminate competition. If you do,
they don't care about that anymore.
Well,
what year was that?
Well, that was in 1997.
Wow, so, things have sure changed now. Now it's all, and they don't care about that at all. Monopolies are everywhere these days.
They cared about it, way back in the 60s, and then it kind of that kind of disappeared. So anyway, so we became part of that holding company, and they bought the affiliated plant, and so we had 2 plants to run, and then it became obvious we needed to merge. We needed to have 1 plant to do. The affiliated plant put everything in a cardboard box and shipped it out to warehouses. Our plant put it in a milk crate, the things that you see on the back of motorcycles and everything. Bookshelves. They're very handy for other things other than hauling milk around. Yeah. Anyway, and we put all our product in there, and that's how we delivered to schools, nursing homes, restaurants, all that would go in those. So we put the 2 plants together where we could do both. Oh. Where we could do cardboard boxes and milk crates. And the plant on I-30 was a lot newer. It was built in 1980, where our plant was built in 1930. And it had all the issues that you would think something that was built that long ago had. So we moved in 2000. We moved everything. We shut the plant down over on Asher and moved out to I-30.
And we're going to put a flagpole out there so y'all can all see it. We're going to put a Coleman Dairy custom flag on it. All right, this is a great place to take a break. We're speaking today with Mr. Walt Coleman, a man with 2 illustrious careers. He's a Coleman Dairy legacy, and at the time of his retirement in 2018, the longest-running NFL referee in history. When we come back, we're going to talk about the NFL Football League. Still to come, young Walt's football career journey. How does one achieve such a career? Rule changes in the game. How much subjectivity is there in a call? And since he was once in the business of games, I've got a game to play with Walt when we come right back.
Hey, Hog fans, it's time to get Razorback ready to call those Hogs to victory. At Flag and Banner, we have all your game day swag. Hog hats, license plates, banners, flags, and more. Come bust out your Arkansas pride today.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I'm speaking today with Mr. Walt Coleman III, NFL referee wearing number 65 from 1989 to 2018, and the 5th generation owner-operator of Coleman Dairy, now called Hiland Dairy. All right, before the break, if you're just tuning in, we talked about Coleman Dairy and the legacy of that business and how business has changed. His fifth great-grandfather started in 1862. I can't get all those greats down.
A lot of greats.
There's a lot of greats in your family.
Yes.
We know that. And then we also talked about how he has a football legacy in his family. But now we're going to talk about your journey. You began officiating in high school football games. Where did you begin officiating? Or did you play football? How did it? I know you said your uncle or somebody and your father. I'm sorry, it was your father. He was a referee.
Well, there were 3 people in our company that were officials. Cliff Shaw, my Uncle Boots, and my dad. All 3 of them were officials in officiating. Now, my uncle stopped because they required him to work Arkansas games. And he said he wasn't going to do that because one bad call, you lose all your business. So,
oh, you mean your Coleman Dairy business?
yes.
Oh, smart. Had a lot of that.
So he retired.
That was
And
even
my
before
dad,
the internet.
And my dad continued to officiate, and they had the rule that in the Southwest Conference that Arkansas officials wouldn't work Arkansas games. So my dad's career in the Southwest Conference, he did not have to work an Arkansas game until at the end of his career when Coach Holtz raised heck about the fact that all the officials working his games were from Texas, because they were either from Texas or Arkansas, because that's where all the teams were from.
And was that when we were the Southwest Conference?
Yes.
That doesn't seem fair.
That's when we were in the Southwest Conference. So it was fair because an A&M graduate is not going to favor a Texas Longhorn.
Well, okay.
Or a Texas Tech graduate is not going to favor Texas A&M.
Yeah.
The fact that they live in Texas doesn't necessarily, and also what that says is the officials are biased.
Yeah.
He's accusing the officials. He's accusing the officials of being biased, of not having the integrity to do what's right. And that's a typical comment that comes from coaches.
All right.
Our fans too.
Yeah. I love reading.
Definitely from fans.
I don't know how I really do not know how you did it, because I've been looking at all the stuff they scream at you from the stands. I think one of them was, Walt, I'm going to kill you. And one of them was, of course, F you. And I mean, they're brutal. They get excited. So,
well, a fan is short for fanatic.
Oh, that's
Sure,
right.
Yeah. It is.
That's right.
So
you got to take that.
Yeah.
So you went from high school. Did you play football yourself ever?
Yes, I played football at Little Rock Central, and I went to Arkansas and was on the freshman team up there, and hurt my knee and decided there had to be an easier way to go to college than trying to play football. So I switched and played baseball, and so I played for Coach DeBryan up there. I played 3 years.
Didn't your uncle build the baseball field at Central?
Well, our family put the money up to build the baseball field at Little Rock Central in my dad's name. So
did you go? So at the college, so then you began refereeing when you got out of college. How long before you decided to start refereeing?
Well, I started immediately when I got out of college in '74. That fall, I signed up and started officiating football games in 74. Were you the
line judge or were you referee?
No, I was a line judge. Referee's the guy that's got to know the rules, is the leader of the crew and so forth. So when you first start out, that's the last place they're going to put you. So I started off as a head linesman or a line judge, which are the guys that are on the line of scrimmage and do forward progress and so forth. So I started that working junior high games at Scott Field. I would work, Southwest against Forest Heights or whatever. And then I'd work junior high games like Benton against Bryan or Hot Springs, the two Hot Springs junior highs. And I got I did get to work some high school games my first year because, Dad knew people that gave me the opportunity and were willing to work with me with their crew. And so, I've got to work some high school games. My very first high school game was Mountain Pine at Mount Ida. That was my very first high school game that I got to work. So everybody has to start somewhere. And most of the time you have to start at the bottom. And you have to work up. And I would say Mount Ida is that's
Bill Barnes. That's Bill Barnes' stomping ground.
It's a good indication of you start and you learn, and as you learn and you move up, and that's the way it worked with me. I started doing high school games. And
so how long before you got to apply for an NFL job? And did you apply or did they contact you?
Well, back then you had to apply, but I worked high school games. And then I applied to a small college, and I applied for the Southland Conference. And I got in the Southland Conference in 1979. So in 79, I got in the Southland. That was a conference back then that Arkansas State was in. Arkansas State, Louisiana Tech, Northeast Louisiana, North Texas, Lamar, McNeese. That was that conference. And so I started working in those, but I was still working. I'd work a high school game on Friday night. Then I would drive to my college game on Saturday. And
And then you'd come home and
then
get divorced.
I'd come home. No, I still have the same wife. I mean,
That's gotta be a hard job for a wife.
She's put up with a lot because I was gone with the regular business, and then doing that. I mean, I was gone. I mean, I was pretty much gone all the time. I mean, I was in 1982. I had a high school game in Cabot on a Friday night. And then I had a college game in Lafayette, Louisiana on Saturday. So I was working the high school game Friday night at Cabot, and I was driving to El Dorado Friday night, spending the night and driving the rest of the way to Lafayette. Well, my wife was pregnant.
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
And the doctor said, well, she wasn't going to have the baby. And so Cynthia said, go work your game. So I went and worked my game, and guess what?
Oh man,
you had a bouncing baby boy,
but no daughter. So by the time I came back through Little Rock from Cabot, heading to El Dorado, we didn't have cell phones back then. So I stopped, and my youngest brother said, "Oh, well, you're in trouble.
Oh my
you better go to the hospital." So I go to the hospital, and she's had our daughter. And, I got to see her and so forth. And then I went and got in the car.
And drove to Lafayette.
And I drove to El Dorado to spend the night. And then I went on to Lafayette on Saturday. So I'm still trying to live that down.
Yeah, I'm mad just sitting over here.
Yeah, but
you can see it on your face.
But unfortunately, those are the things when it was like having two jobs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it was. It was two jobs. You worked your regular job Monday through Friday, and then at that time, because I was trying to get experience. I mean, I needed games. The more games you work, the better you get. It's like anything. And so working on a Friday night. Now, once I got into the Southwest Conference, which I got in the Southwest Conference in 1984, they didn't allow you to work. They didn't let you work on Friday nights. You had to be at the game site, on Friday.
Oh, to get ready.
To get ready. So that eliminated that issue.
Because for everybody that doesn't know, college games are on Saturdays.
Yes. And so at that point, I would just, it was just a Saturday. It was a Saturday deal. But
so how did you get in the NFL?
Well, it's an interesting story because all I ever wanted to do was work college football. That's what my dad did. I mean, he worked college football. He worked the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. And I just wanted to work college football and work bowl games like my dad. Well, but because of Coach Holtz, they forced Arkansas officials to start having to work Arkansas games. So when I got in the league, in the Southwest Conference, not only was I working Arkansas games, my dad was. So both of us were working Arkansas football games. And it was, I love working the games, but from the perspective of people looking at it, I mean, it looks bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looks bad, but they changed the rules.
Talk about nepotism.
Yeah, they changed the rules. I mean, Arkansas officials, even graduates of Arkansas could work Arkansas game. A graduate of Texas could work Texas game. Graduate of Texas A&M could work A&M games. They totally changed the rules. And they also brought some officials in from other states, which they had never done.
I can't tell if you liked that they changed it or that you didn't like that they changed it.
Well,
you don't care.
No, I didn't think they should have changed it. I think they should have left it like it was.
Okay.
But if they hadn't changed it, I might not be in the NFL.
Well, there you go.
Because the reason I applied to the NFL was because I didn't want to be working Arkansas football games. And I didn't have any other options because back then in the officiating world, you had to live in a state where the school was. So in order to work in the SEC, you had to live in Florida or Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia or, where the schools. And so in the Southwest Conference, in order to work in the Southwest Conference, you had to live in either Texas or Arkansas.
Oklahoma.
That's the way it worked. No, Oklahoma was in the Big 12 or Big 8. They were in the Big 8.
Oh, I thought they were in the Southwest Conference.
No, Oklahoma was always in the Big 8. So you couldn't work Oklahoma. And so my only option, if I didn't want to work in the Southwest Conference, was to go back and work in the South and where Arkansas State was, or not officiate, or, as my dad said, Walt, apply to the NFL.
Okay, and you did.
And I said, well, There's never been an official from Arkansas in the NFL. Why should I apply? I'll never get in. He said, typical sales guy, my dad. All they can say is no. I said,
doesn't hurt to ask.
Anyway, so I applied to the NFL, and it took a couple of years. And Doyle Jackson from Conway got in the year before I did, so he was the first Arkansas official to get in. And then I got in the next season in 1989, and then Doyle decided he didn't like it. He didn't like all this travel. I mean, it was, and because you're gone and so forth. So he retired. He resigned after two seasons. He just didn't like it. So then I became the only Arkansas official. So that's how. So in 1989. There I was in the National Football League.
Talk about the first day you walked on the field. Line judge again, I guess?
Yes, I was a line judge my first year in the NFL. And
only 1 year?
No, I was line judge for 6.
Okay.
I was line judge for 6 seasons, then I became the referee.
Talk about walking on the field the first time for an NFL game and where it was. Do you remember which game it is?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an unbelievable story from that game. I mean, you have to understand, growing up, I mean, I was a Arkansas kid. I mean, I grew up in Arkansas. I went to school at the University of Arkansas, and I came back to Little Rock and went to work in our family business. So I was an Arkansas guy. I hadn't done a bunch of traveling. I hadn't gone a bunch of places, and so when I got in the NFL, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I was a pretty much an unknown.
And that accent of yours, that ought to just made everybody laugh.
Yeah, it did. But the other thing was when they sent out the roster of the new officials for 1989, then I started I would get congratulatory notes and so forth, and they would say, we're so excited about having another official from Arizona, because they would have Mableville AR.
Oh. Yeah.
And they'd say, well, it's great to have somebody from Arizona. So, I mean, but anyway, so my very first, now, in the NFL, we have preseason games.
Yeah.
So you have, back then, there's only 3 now, but we had 4 preseason games. So they were, like practice games, which was great. I needed the practice games. So my very first practice game that I had was in San Francisco. They send me to San Francisco. Now, they put you in teams. They put you with the veteran guys. So you go on to a team with guys that have worked Super Bowls, that have worked, and you're going to work whatever games they work.
And you stay together in that
And you stay in that group for the whole season.
Okay.
For a whole season.
You get to know each other.
You get to know each other. You learn who's strong. I mean, all the weakness and so forth.
Yeah.
But you work with the same guys. But that means if that team is working a Monday night football game, well, you're going to be thrown out there in your first year as working a Monday night football game. So anyway, the first game, preseason game, I go to San Francisco. It's the Oakland Raiders playing the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers won the Super Bowl the year before. I mean, they were the Super Bowl champs from the year before. Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and all those guys was on the team. So I walk out on the field in Candlestick Park in San Francisco. Obviously, I'd never been there.
No.
Didn't know any of these people. I didn't know a soul. And so we walk out on the field before the game for warm-ups, and I'm obviously somewhat nervous, and to say the least. And so I'm walking up the sideline of the Raiders, where the Raiders bench is, and there's this guy standing there watching warm-ups, and he's got on a white shirt, white belt, white pants, white socks, and white shoes. Well, anybody that follows the NFL is going to know who this was. But anyway, I recognize him as being Al Davis. Al Davis, the owner and general manager of the Raiders. I mean, I'd seen him on television. I mean, he had those great football teams, and they won Super Bowls, and plus he created a lot of issues for the NFL, by suing them and wanting to move and, all that kind of stuff, And so anyway, so he's standing there, and I know who he is. But I'm just this first-year guy from AR, and I don't want to have anything to do with him. So I'm just going to walk on down the sideline, like I'm supposed to. Well, when I get there close to him, he turns and sticks out his hand, and he says, "Hi, Walt. How you doing?"
He's smart. He's getting to know the referees. He's not a dummy, is he? Be nice to the referees.
So, I'm so flabbergasted. I mean, I don't even respond. I say nothing.
I was going to say, were you starstruck?
Yes.
Yeah.
The fact that he knew my name. And then when I didn't say anything, he says, well, Walt, tell me, how's Cynthia? How's Walter and Courtney?
Oh, he is a salesperson, isn't he?
And so I didn't have a response to that either. I just kept walking. And, he probably sitting there thinking, well, I knew the guy was blind, but they found one that's deaf too, But the greatest thing about that is what it showed me. I mean, it hit me right in the face. I hadn't even worked a game yet. It showed me, what it takes to be successful in the National Football League. It takes preparation. It takes hard work. Look, this is the owner and general manager of the Oakland Raiders, and he's taken enough time, or he's got somebody to find out what the name of this first-year official is, the name of his family. So if he has the opportunity to use it, he could. He had the opportunity, and boy, he used it.
I love it.
And so
preparation. Yeah, even with the referees.
That hit me. That that's what it's going to take to be successful. Because he was successful. I found that the best way is if you hang around successful people and you pay attention, man, well, you can learn a lot of stuff. Obviously, that's what you're doing with this program.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
I mean, that's exactly what you're doing.
I'm learning a lot.
I mean, we can all learn by hanging around. I mean, and I was so fortunate. Look at the people I got to hang around. I got to hang around with.
I know.
I mean, people who were the best at what they did in the whole world.
Well, we're going to talk about them in a minute. But before we get to that, that's in our next segment. But before we leave this segment, I want to talk about rules of the game. And I'm bored with the tuck rule. Everything online about you is the tuck rule. Quickly tell our people what the tuck rule is. But I want to talk about some other calls that I think are really hard to call, like pass interference. I can't tell if it's pass interference. Holding, is it holding? Targeting? I mean, those are tough ones for me, sitting at home on my couch and watching TV and going, well, I don't know. How does the guy do it? But tell our listeners what the call you're most famous for, which is the tuck rule.
Well, the reason that this tuck rule is so famous and people want to continue to talk about it is because what happened after my call. I mean, if New England hadn't won the game, if New England hadn't gone ahead and won the Super Bowl, and if New England hadn't gone ahead and won 6 more Super Bowls after that, and Tom Brady hadn't become the greatest quarterback in the history of the league, that play wouldn't have meant anything. But that play started all of those other things that happened. And, it was a divisional playoff game in New England in a driving snowstorm, in a blizzard, and I'm the referee of the game, and Oakland is at New England, and Oakland is ahead 13-10, and we're inside of 2 minutes of the game. Now it's a blizzard. They can't, it's only 13-10, so nobody can score because the conditions were just horrible.
Right.
It snowed like 12 inches during the game. It
looks
just
like
crazy.
a whiteout when you look at it online.
Right. It is.
It is a whiteout. I can't believe they let the game go on, actually.
Well, they don't call football games for anything but lightning.
Well,
lightning is it can rain buckets, but as long as it's not lightning, you're gonna play football. So anyway, with less than 2 minutes in the game, and New England gets the ball on the 40-yard line with no timeouts left, behind 13-10, and so they've got to try to drive down there and get a field goal or a touchdown. And on the very first play, on 1st and 10, Brady drops back to pass. He starts to throw the ball, but he brings it down. He's changed his mind as he brings it down. Charles Woodson hits him. The ball comes loose. And Oakland recovers it. The game's over. It's a fumble. New England can't stop the clock, so the game's over. Oakland wins the game. Well, we have replay. And so the replay official up in the booth called down and told me to stop the game. It doesn't work like it does now, the way replay is. I mean, it was all me. It was all the referee back then.
Oh.
So I go over to the replay monitor to take a look at this play. And my replay guy says, when I get over there and put the headphone on, he says, Walt, this is the game. And I said, yeah, I've kind of figured that. So anyway, but when I saw the play, I was behind the play. because that's where I lined up, is behind the quarterback, about 15 yards deep behind the defense. And when Brady started to bring the ball down, he turned his body, and then Woodson, the two of them screened me out of exactly what happened. And back then, if you have a question between whether it's a fumble or whether it's a forward pass, you always rule fumble because you can always change it. You can change it from a fumble to an incomplete pass.
Yeah.
But if you rule incomplete,
you don't get to do the review?
You can't change it back then. Now you can now.
Okay.
But back then you can't. So if you ruled it an incomplete pass, the ball is dead, the play's over. And so since I didn't have a clear view, I rule fumble.
Sure.
And I gave the ball Oakland to win the game. But with replay, I got to see the shot from the front. It clearly showed that when Brady got hit, he was bringing the ball down, and that's why it's called a tuck rule. Back then you had to tuck the ball against your body, and then if it came out, it would be a fumble.
Oh,
but he never got the ball. He never got the ball tucked back.
He was still in a
forward pass motion. So that's why they call it the tuck rule, because he had to tuck it back
to make it a fumble,
which he didn't do. So now there I am looking at this. It's my call. I mean, I ruled it a fumble. So now I've got to decide: am I going to change my call? Now, at the time, all the announcers said it was a fumble on the broadcast. They said there's no way that you're going to change this. It's a fumble. I mean, it looked like a fumble.
Right.
I mean, everybody thought it was a fumble. My wife thought it was a fumble. I mean, but I knew the rule.
But you got to follow the rules. And
you have to do what's right. You have to have the guts and intestinal fortitude to do what's right. So I told the replay guy, I said, hey, this is not a fumble. This is an incomplete pass. He said, I agree. We need to change it. So I came out, made the announcement. We gave the ball
back to Brady.
We got the ball back to Brady. Second down, back still on the 40.
2 minutes left.
And the rest is history. Drives them down. Adam Vinatieri kicks a 48-yard field goal in a blizzard.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it was a line shot.
That's why you love football right there.
And a game, so tied the game. Game went into overtime. We're in overtime. Vinatieri kicks a field goal.
And that was
wins the game 16-13. Then everybody said, I mean, the huge controversy. I mean, everybody said I shouldn't have changed it. I mean, it was just a big mess. The media. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Oh, I know.
But everybody said it would go away because New England had to go to Pittsburgh the next week to play Pittsburgh in the AFC Championship game.
Oh, and they would have. Yeah.
And they said they're not going to beat Pittsburgh. Well, guess what? They went to Pittsburgh. They beat Pittsburgh. Then everybody says, well, they're going to have to play St. Louis in the Super Bowl, and that's when St. Louis had that great team with Kurt Warner and that offense and so forth, and said, oh, they're going to lose. Well, guess what? They won the Super Bowl. So here we go.
So that rule that you're referring to, you made that call in 2002, and that rule started in 1999, and then they finally discontinued it in 2013 because it was so controversial.
Well, they changed the interpretation.
They changed the way the article was written.
Yeah, you still have to rule.
Yeah.
You still have to rule whether it's a pass or a fumble, and they just changed the fact that if he's bringing it on down and he gets past about this point, he's not intending to throw it, so it's a fumble.
So is Tom Brady your best friend? Does he hug you every time he sees you?
Well, he
sends you Christmas cards.
Let me just put it. We had a good relationship when we were on the field.
Who were you playing? Who was the other team?
Oakland.
Did they talk to you ever?
Oh, I mean, I got a lot of stuff back then, and Oakland Raider fans still, and Charles Woodson. I mean, there's been enough TV stuff and so forth, and but I did what's right. It's just part of it, and that's the nature of what we do. And my last regular season game in my career, they actually. They probably did it on purpose, but I don't know. But anyway, I had New England. I had the Jets at New England for my for last regular season game, and they were way ahead of the Jets at the end. And Brady wasn't in the game. They had the backup quarterback in there, for right at the end. And so when the game ended, Brady ran out the bench and came to me and and shook my hand and congratulated me on a great career and all that kind of stuff. And then and gave me the game ball.
Did you cry?
And then no. And then in the locker room, Mr. Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, came in the locker room and presented me with another game ball and thanked me for my time as far as in the National Football League. So
that's cool.
So anyway, I have a good relationship with the Patriots, and I have a bad relationship. I never worked the Raiders again.
I bet.
Sure.
I mean, the rest of my career, I never had a Oakland Raider game.
Well, they didn't want you to get shot, probably.
So.
So let's talk about some other rules real quick before we go to break. illegal contact. Well, no, the one that really gets me is targeting. That's new. I'm glad we have targeting, but it's really tricky to call to me.
Yes, that they don't have that rule in the NFL.
Oh, they don't?
No.
Wow. Well, I do watch a lot of college. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Now it's a foul, but it's not a disqualification.
I gotcha.
That's the difference, and that's the big thing that the college fans have the problem with.
It's because you get kicked out of the game
you get kicked out of the game and you get disqualified, and that's the big problem that everybody has. They don't have so much a problem with the fact that it's a foul and they need to get that play out of the game. It's the fact that a player is disqualified, and if you get disqualified in the second quarter, in the second half, you can't play the first half of the next game.
So how about pass interference?
It's hard.
That one is
judgment.
Really hard.
It's judgment. It's hard.
And it's always in the end zone. And it's always about a touchdown.
It's hard. And, in college, it's just a 15-yard penalty or spot foul, whichever is, if it's either 50, it won't be ever be more than 15 yards.
Yeah.
If the pass interference is 6 yards, it'll be at 6 yards. If it's 30 yards, it's going to be at 15. Where in the NFL, it's a spot foul. And a lot of people say, they ought to just make the penalty a 15-yard penalty because it's too hard. It's too much as far as a 30-yard penalty. 30.
It could be a Hail Mary. And then
but the problem is the NFL defensive players are so talented.
Yeah, God,
you'd never complete a pass. Because if you get beat at 20, they're going to just tackle the guy because they know it's only going to be a 15-yard penalty. Those guys are so good.
Yeah,
those athletes are just so unbelievable. Deion Sanders, the things that he did. I had a game where it was in Atlanta, and at that time he played for Atlanta, and the 49ers, who had won the Super Bowl, they were playing, and Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, that bunch. But Steve Young might have been the quarterback at this point. Anyway, but Deion played in a baseball game. They were in the World Series. He played in a baseball game on Saturday. And he flew to Atlanta, and he played cornerback for the Falcons and covered Jerry Rice. Now, that's the type of athlete, there are not very many people
inhuman
that can do, that can do that.
It really is such a step above. College
superhuman.
It really is.
Oh,
the leap is unbelievable.
It is. And
the way they can thread the needle, sometimes I'm like, how did Tom Brady throw that so perfectly between all those people to just thread the needle right there to get it into the hands of his receiver?
Speed is the biggest difference because they're all big, but it's the speed of the players and how fast things happen.
How many Super Bowls did you play in?
I didn't do any.
You didn't?
I didn't get to do any. Oh. I was an alternate in 3.
Oh, that's right.
But I never got to work on the field at a Super Bowl, which obviously is one of my big disappointments.
That's why you stayed in 30 years. You're like, one of these days I'm going to get in there.
I enjoyed the officiating. I enjoyed, being involved. There's nothing like standing out there before an NFL game, knowing you're responsible for what goes on here, and standing there, and they're doing the national anthem.
Oh.
And just the excitement and the fact that you're involved in something that so many people think is so important. It's hard. You can't replace that. You can't replace that. It's like running through it'd be like for the Razorback, running through that A. Is there anything you could do that would give you that same feeling that you would get as, like a running through the A?
Yeah. There's not a word for it. Awe does not have a word. That kind of awe that you're talking about, it's beyond words.
Yes. And, I hope that everybody, figures out something that they do that gives them that type of feeling.
Were you nervous?
To miss out on that kind of feeling, was I nervous?
Were you nervous every game?
Yes.
Every game?
Yes.
Never got calm.
I would have, my stomach would, I don't know if you want to call it nerves or just the excitement, but because it was so important, and you're on national television, and you don't want to mess up.
And when you started, though, there wasn't the internet.
Oh no!
Oh yeah!
No!
Yeah!
No,
now there is. Now everything you do is.
But it developed. I mean, that was the funny thing. There were no cell phones, back then, and when I first started, and the video wasn't as good. I mean, there wasn't high definition television where they can see the sweat on your brow now, and so things have really changed. And the longer I was in the league, I could get in the bus after the game on the ride to the airport and have some fan send me a email
or text
text. I could get text too. So it was harder for them to get my cell phone number than they could. Funny thing happened to me, and I had a Baltimore Pittsburgh game in Baltimore, and we had a play at the end of the game where I had to change a ruling that instead of sending the game would have gone into overtime. I ruled to play a touchdown with replay, and Pittsburgh won the game. It was the last play of the game. So I changed this ruling, and so
you got a lot of emails about that.
So Baltimore lost the game. And they thought they'd won the game. And so by the time I got, and it was a 4:00 game in Baltimore, so I couldn't fly home on Sunday night. I had to fly home on Monday. And by the time I got to my office, I asked my receptionist, I said, did I get any calls? She said, no. But when I got to my office, my little red light was flashing on my messages. And I had 57 messages on my phone, my personal office phone, and from Baltimore fans.
I was going to say,
now,
all from Baltimore.
Yes. Yeah, and I only had to listen to 2 or 3 to get the message of what they were trying to get across. So anyway, what happened is on our website, on our website, out on the internet, it had everybody's
Coleman Dairy's website.
It had everybody's office number.
Yeah.
Walt Coleman had my. So you can imagine what was the first thing I did.
Took your number right.
I took my number off.
How do you handle the stress and the criticism and stuff? Can you compartmentalize it?
Sure,
you can.
Yeah, I mean it's your job. We all have stress. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have stress. Worrying about what's going on at Flag and Banner. I mean, we all have stress. But if you're focused on what you're doing, if you're concentrated on that kind of stuff, while it's going, the stress for me was more before the game.
Me too. Once I'm in the fight, I'm ready to go.
Right.
I am a fight.
So
I'm ready.
You want to, and to me, the more prepared you are,
the better you feel.
The better you feel. It's the same thing. And if you're taking a test, I mean, if you think you're prepared, to me, you're going to do better. So that was the whole deal, is making sure that your preparation, and that was something that was very important to me as the crew chief, the one that's responsible for all the other guys on your team and so forth. I mean, I wanted to make sure that, that we did what we needed to do on Saturday in preparation for that game on Sunday, because we wanted to be the best team on the field.
Is there a lot of preparation?
There are 3 teams out there.
Yeah, if you count the referees.
If you count our team.
Is there a lot of preparation? Do you have to know a lot about? Oh, really? You have to know a lot about the other team?
Well, it's helpful.
Really?
It's helpful to know what kind of formations they run. Are they going to use a lot of motion?
Oh, yeah.
Do they do like the Cowboys when they go on the line, when they used to go up and then go down? And what does the center do with the football? Does he mess around with the ball? And so what are the tendencies? Are there?
Because it decides where you're going to stand and what you're going to be looking for.
We all stand the same place.
Oh, you don't move that around?
You stand at the same place.
Okay, but you know where to look.
But yes, and what to look for.
And what to look for.
And also what to expect. If you know what to expect, if you're looking for something, it's a whole lot easier. That's why we are able to officiate stuff, because we're not watching the ball. As a fan, you watch the ball.
Yes.
Everybody watch TV. watches the ball.
Right.
We do not watch the ball. We watch in front of the play. So we know what's going on. So you just know where the ball is out of your peripheral vision. I never knew whether a pass was complete or incomplete because my responsibility was to watch the quarterback.
Oh, and then the other guy down there.
The other guys, they're watching the receivers and so forth. So,
sure.
And people would say, "Well, why didn't you change that? Why didn't you tell that guy he was wrong?" I wasn't looking there.
You were working on your specific spot.
I was doing my responsibilities and my job. And, that's the thing. That's the thing we all have to understand is you have to, if you're going to be successful, you have to be able to trust the people in your company or whatever to do their job because I wasn't good enough to do everybody's job.
Yeah, you'd have to have some,
because,
how many games do you watch prior to a football game? So you're fixing to go in and watch the Patriots and the Raiders play each other. How many games of those twos do you watch, or do you skip around?
Well, you'll watch usually the previous week's game for the teams that you're getting ready to work to see what they did the previous week. The thing that you spent the most time was watching your own game from the previous week and what went on in it.
Oh, to critique yourself.
Yes.
Oh, isn't that hard?
And
I bet that's hard.
The league office critiqued it also.
Oh.
They evaluate every official on every play.
Oh.
Now, that was very difficult. Can you imagine if you had to do an employee evaluation on every one of your employees once a week?
No, that sounds awful.
It is. But that's what we had. I mean, each game was evaluated. So each week you would get an evaluation. They would tell you, well, you missed this. Well, you missed this. Well, you got this one right. You missed this.
It's such big money. They've got to have all that good. You've got to try to be as perfect as you can.
Yeah,
it's huge money.
Oh, yeah. It's the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs and one,
how much?
One
Millions.
call. I mean, that's why the league is paranoid about gambling and all that kind of stuff and all the things they do with your background checks and not wanting you to be on social media and not being involved in any of that.
Tell our listeners that you can't be on social media.
No.
I think that's interesting.
You cannot go into any type of gambling establishment during the season.
Whether you're a player, coach, or just the referee.
The rules are different for players and coaches.
Okay, so it's just referees cannot be on any social media.
We are the integrity of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The officials are the integrity of the game. And so we can't go to any of those places. Now, when the season is over, then you can go, but you have to tell New York you're going. So, for instance, in February, if I wanted to go to Oaklawn, to the racetrack, I had to tell New York that I was going and what days I was going to be there.
Wow, that's a lot of commitment. All right, this is a great place to take a break. We'll continue our conversation with Mr. Walt Coleman III, a man with two very illustrious careers. He's Coleman Dairy legacy, and at the time of his retirement in 2018, the longest-running NFL referee. Are you still the longest-running NFL referee, or has anybody beat you?
Well, there were a couple of guys that had been in longer than me. I was just at the time. I was in for 30 years, but there's two guys that were in 31 years and so forth. So,
all right.
Anyway.
Still to come, the facts, the feelings, and the business of NFL leagues, skills, egos, power, money, and I have a word association game planned for Walt. He loves a good game. We'll be right back.
Buying a flag isn't always easy. Luckily, Arkansas's flagandbanner.com is here to help. Locally owned and operated for more than 40 years, our friendly and knowledgeable staff will help you find just what you're looking for. From flags, to banners, to decorations and more. Shop online or in-store. Come see us today. Arkansas's flagandbanner.com. We're the experts.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm talking with Mr. Walt Coleman III, a Coleman Dairy descendant, but his true legacy may be his NFL career. Number 65, referee from 1989 to 2018. At the beginning of the show, we talked about Coleman Dairy and the legacy founded in 1862. And then the second half, we talked about the rules, the game, and really, we talked about the fan abuse, which we now know why they're called fans, because they're fanatics, and they act like it. If you go and Google up Walt's name, he's in Wikipedia, but you can also watch all the people yell at him and You got to have some big kahunas to do that. There's a lot of confidence and be able to compartmentalize everything.
I tell people, just go out on the internet and put in Walt Coleman and see what's the first thing that pops up. And it's not very complimentary. Don't not
do
very
that.
Complimentary.
No, really.
Maybe don't start with that.
So we talked about how there's no word to describe the excitement of going on the field. I mean, awe does not really a good description of the feeling that you have. So is there one of your favorite games that sticks out in your mind?
Well, unfortunately, as we've already talked, I didn't get to work a Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
So my two biggest games past that would have been my two championship games. I worked the NFC Championship game and I worked the AFC Championship game. So, from a important standpoint, I mean, those two games decide who's going to go to the Super Bowl. And so those were, important big games. And one of them, Atlanta at Minnesota, I mean, that game went into overtime. So, I had my NFC Championship game actually went into overtime. And my AFC game was Indianapolis at New England. So I had Peyton Manning and Tom Brady as the two quarterbacks.
So when you retired, how old were you?
66.
Is it hard to run up and down the field at 66?
Yes. But for me, the most difficult thing was the mental change over the period of time. Mentally, you're not as fast. You're not as quick as you get older.
Yeah.
You don't, it's just not the same.
Really?
And so when you're working the referee position where you've got to know the rules and you've got to react immediately and you've got that microphone where you've got to turn that thing on and you're live on television, you've got to explain what happens. And so that was, physically, I probably could have, but I just felt like it was time. I mean, I'd been in there for 30 years. I mean, I'd done it a long time. And so I just felt so fortunate that I had the opportunity to do it that long. And the players
Is there a favorite player?
Well, the player that I liked the most, just because the type of player he was and type of person he was on the field, was Barry Sanders.
Really?
He was unbelievable running back, and he was a class person. He would never spike the ball. He would get up and hand you the ball. I mean, he was just a class. But
who'd he play for?
Detroit. He retired after 9 years. He had a short career, but he was number 2 in the number of yards. But I was on the field with Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders and Troy Aikman and Brett Favre and Peyton and Eli and Aaron Rodgers.
That brings me to our game. All right, you get to do one word because these are people that you've been on the field with, and you can only do one word to describe each of these people. And you've mentioned him a couple times, Joe Montana.
Cool.
He is cool.
And when people would ask me who was the best quarterback that I've ever officiated, I would always say Montana until Brady won 6 Super Bowls.
Oh yeah.
And then I had to kind of start fudging, but look at some of the quarterbacks. I mean when I was my 30 years in the league, I mean Marino and John Elway.
Okay, here we go. Terry Bradshaw.
Well,
one word for Terry Bradshaw. I know he probably didn't play on the field with you, but you probably had to talk to him all the time because he was an announcer and he's always around.
Well,
not really.
No, I didn't.
So you don't get to talk to those announcer guys up there.
No, you don't have any. You don't have any contact
with Tom Dungy or Terry Bradshaw
with any of the announcers.
Okay.
I mean, I would have to go to the TV truck before the game. Well, we would get to the stadium 3 hours before the game, and I'd have to go to the TV truck just to make sure we're on. Because I'm responsible for the commercials.
What?
I mean, I'm responsible to get when they take commercials.
Oh no!
Sure,
really?
Yeah, stopping.
Because I'm the one stopping the clock and stopping the game.
Right.
Okay.
And so we would have to get in 20 commercials. And so it was my responsibility to make sure that we got in these 20 commercials. And so I would go to the TV truck and get the time and make sure that we're all on the same page. And then we would have a TV meeting 90 minutes before kickoff where we would go over all the commercial layouts and how long the commercials are going to be, because we would time the commercials and so forth.
And I guess you have a cheat sheet in your pocket and you're looking at it.
I had a card, and every time we'd do a TV, I would circle it so I'd know where we were as far as the commercials. So you were called the
crew captain at this time?
I was called that was the referee position. See, now everybody's a referee, but then there is a referee position. There's a referee, umpire, line judge, side judge, down judge. Was your position. And I was the referee, and I was the one responsible for managing the game.
Well, Terry Bradshaw is so funny to me. And then, so I guess you never met Tony or spoke with Tony Dungy. How do you say his name?
Tony Dungy.
Dungy.
He was a head coach.
While you were,
well, sure.
Oh, I thought he was been in the box the whole time. So give me one word for him.
Class.
John Elway.
One word, huh?
You can do two if you want to.
Strong.
Really?
Yeah, he could throw. He's the only guy I could see running to the right and throwing it 50 yards back to the left. He said, never throw the ball, back all the way across the field. Elway could. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was big
one of my favorites.
And strong and
one of my favorites, Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, he was a great running back. He was jokester.
Really?
Jokester. He liked to stand when he went in. He liked to stand behind you and play around with you.
He's got that little grin on his face.
When the game was over. Walter Payton, great player in the National Football League. He retired the year before I got in the league, and like my very first regular season game in the NFL was in Chicago. I had Cincinnati at Chicago, my very first regular season NFL game, and my shoe kept coming untied. And I couldn't figure out and
he was untying it.
And he was he was hilarious. He was untying my shoe. He had a history of that as far as coming out of the piles of and untying people's shoes and so forth. But
Troy Aikman.
Those guys were so good and so focused. I was going to say focused, but that's the one where I would use that for Peyton.
So Peyton Manning, you would call focused.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for him because he was such a great player for so long, but not long enough. I mean, he was such a great player, but not long enough because Tom Brady came up right behind him and knocked him off the pedestal.
They were just both great quarterbacks.
I know.
And a lot of it has to do with the rest of your team. And so.
What do you think about Belichick?
He and I obviously get along fine because of the Tuck rule. I mean, everybody in New England I got along with really well. I mean, Coach Belichick and I, had a good relationship. I mean, you develop, me being in the league 30 years, I mean, I was around a long time.
You remember?
So any of the coaches that were around, for any period of time, I got to connect with them pretty good because I mean I was the one that they always wanted to talk to.
Sure.
I mean they could argue.
You're pulling the strings.
They could holler with the guys over there on the sideline in front of them, but they eventually want to talk to me.
What do you think about Flakegate? What's it called? Flakegate when the ball
Inflategate.
Inflategate because tell our listeners what it was.
I think it was a big joke. I mean I think it was totally mishandled. I mean everything loses air when it gets cold.
That's true.
How many of us had the tire light come on your car the first time it gets cold?
So for our listeners, they thought that
Tom Brady had the equipment guide. Once after we checked the balls, I mean, we checked every ball, 24 footballs.
Oh, and they were all fine.
That's how many footballs we have to check before a game, 24. We checked the pressure and so forth, the air pressure, and they said that between the time we checked them and they got out on the field, that Tom Brady had somebody let air out because he liked a ball that was softer, supposedly.
I would too, yeah. So
some guys like them, but it'd be hard. But the part of it that I have a big problem with is that the next season, after this supposedly happened in this playoff game, the next season they had us, when it started getting cold, they had us checking the balls before the game, at halftime, and after the game, checking the air pressure. And any games that were cold, the balls lost at least a pound.
Dang, that's a lot.
Because it got cold.
On a little ball. I mean, what's the pressure on a ball?
13.
Yeah.
13 and a half.
That's almost 10%. Yeah.
So I just think that it's just one of those things that they got out of hand and they overreacted without having, and That happens all the time.
Fanatics.
People overreact to stuff.
All
and
the time.
When you're winning, everybody wants to knock you down.
Yeah.
And New England won for a long
So
time.
I noticed ever since, I guess, replays or something, all the coaches hold up their play schedule in front of their mouth so people can't read their lips. Were they really reading lips and calling? Oh, my God.
They'll do, obviously, any advantage that you can get is going to make a big difference. If you have any idea what the play they're going to run, I mean, it's all about, trying to confuse. I mean, everything they do, they're trying to confuse the defense. And so
they have lip readers in the booth watching the coach on the other side.
Yes, they don't allow, you can't film coaches. There's been accusations where you film coaches and try to get their by tendencies by looking at film from their previous games and so forth.
Oh.
I mean, it's with all the technology now, as far as that they've got, the NFL has all kinds of rules about that because they're worried about people stealing signals, and that's why they went to putting the microphones in the helmets, where the coaches can, they tell
talk to the players through their helmet.
They talk to, the quarterback has a microphone and the linebacker, whoever on the defense is calling in, they have microphones in their helmets and the coach tells them what play to run as opposed to signal. You know how they used to signal in plays?
Yeah, and had stuff on their arms.
Yeah, well, they still have that on there because the coach will tell them, this is the play, and then they'll have to look to see what it is. But their communication is and that's one of the big changes, technology. The officials, you'll notice officials are wearing earpieces and microphones so they can talk to we can talk to each other. We used not to be able to do that. Now, if something happens on one side of the field, they can tell me, and I don't even have to go over there. They can say, I've got this. So the technology is improved a lot of things so much from when I got in the league.
That's pretty nice.
It's been unbelievable.
How about Brett Favre?
Fun. He just loved playing the game. I mean,
Tommy Romo. I don't know. He rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what it is about him. Romo.
I only had a couple. I didn't have many Dallas games.
How about Eli Manning?
Class act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Tom Brady? We know you love him.
Yeah.
All right. How about this one? Jerry Jones. The owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Arkansas boy.
Yeah, he's Arkansas. He lived in Little Rock. I knew Jerry. I mean, I knew him. When he was here. I mean, he was on that great Razorback team that, in 64, and so because that was the only person involved in the National Football League that I knew. I mean, I didn't know any of the other people.
Did he help lobby for you?
No, because he bought the Cowboys the same year I got in the league, 89. That was his first year to own the Cowboys.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so my first year in the league was 89. So for me, even though I knew Jerry and knew him from Little Rock, and he knew my dad, and I mean everything. I mean, and his wife and my cousin are really good friends. I mean, they were in college together.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So when I'd have the Cowboys, I totally ignored them.
Yeah.
Because I people see things and they draw conclusions. And so you have to be very careful from my standpoint as a referee. I would never talk to any coach for very long, for any extent, because everybody thinks that they're trying to get an advantage.
Well, they are.
And they are sometimes.
Well, and you can see that the referees just stare ahead and the coaches just in their ear. What about Troy Aikman?
Had a lot of his games, but he was just a really good quarterback.
Is there one did we already ask you? Oh yeah, if there was one you liked more than other ones. Did I ask you that already?
You asked me about one player.
Oh, yeah.
Now the greatest player at a particular position was Jerry Rice, and I worked a lot of his games as far as a receiver. But to me,
is Jerry Rice from Arkansas?
No.
Where's he from?
I think he's from Mississippi. He played at Mississippi, one of the small schools in Mississippi, one of the predominantly black colleges in Mississippi. But I mean, he was.
What do you think about Patrick Mahomes now? I love watching that kid.
Oh yeah, but I hate working those kind of quarterbacks.
Why?
Because they run around.
Oh,
see, the referee's supposed to follow them. You're supposed to chase them.
Oh,
You're supposed to be with them, so that if they get illegally hit or something. But see, and he runs around. He's great quarterback. He's fun, but those are I like the guys that stood in one place.
I bet so did the rushers.
Like Marino and Eli and Brady and those guys.
Oh yeah, Brady doesn't move.
Those guys stand in one place, But you take guys like Michael Vick and Steve Young and a lot of these new guys that run around. They make it a lot more difficult from an officiating standpoint because you don't know where they're going to be and they're going to be running, and that's what the defense wants. Mm-hmm. They will get that. Oh. They want the defense.
They like that.
Well, yeah, because they can kill the quarterback, and that's what they're out there for.
I would have thought they liked him sitting still.
When he's a runner, he doesn't have all the protections that they now first got in the league, they didn't have all these protections for the quarterbacks. But now you can't hit the quarterback low, can't hit him high, can't hit him late, can't hit him with your helmet. They've put in a lot of rules to protect the quarterback because when your starting quarterback goes down, the game deteriorates in a hurry. That's why they're trying to take the head out of the game. When I was coming up playing football, you led with your head. You stick your head right in their chest and so forth. So they've had to change the whole coaching techniques to take the head, and they're still having. I was watching the game last night, and Utah player, middle of the second quarter. He gets thrown out of the game for targeting. But they're really stressing it, and you can see the change.
Yeah.
Defensive backs, safeties. Those guys, Ronnie Lott, and those guys, they used to destroy receivers back there.
I know.
But now, because of the rule changes, they've.
Well, football's great. It's like gladiators, 21st century gladiators. They come out into that big arena with the tiered seats, and they just out there to break each other's legs and faces.
I tell people it's like a car wreck on every play.
It absolutely is.
They're running, these big guys, big, huge guys running into each other on every play.
And leaping into the air, so vulnerable to grab a ball and then just getting hit and thrown to the ground. I'm like, I don't know how they do it.
I was at... We would go to training camps before the season, and I was up at Detroit's training camp one year, and they had these big 55-gallon drums. They were full of ice water. They're right by the practice.
So they can sit in them.
That's exactly right.
I heard about that.
That's exactly right. That's what they would do. They would, when the practice was over, they would get in these, and now they have the ice baths and so forth, but they didn't have their ice baths right there, so they were using 55-gallon barrels, and the guys would get in them and sit down in there. Now, can you imagine what that's doing to your body? I understand what it's helping, but can you imagine over long term what that kind of change from does? Those guys.
They're gladiators.
I don't know how they get up on Monday mornings.
They're gladiators. All right. If you're just tuning in, we've been visiting with NFL's number 65 referee, Mr. Walt Coleman. We've learned about his family business, Coleman Dairy, founded in 1862 by his great-great-great-great-grandfather. You can read more about Coleman Dairy on Wikipedia. And we've talked football. In 2018, Walt retired from his 30-year career as an NFL referee. Through our conversation today, he has allowed us a glimpse behind the curtain into the world of the National Football League. We'll be right back.
Do you have something to say? Say it in flying colors. I'm Kerry McCoy, owner of flagandbanner.com, where flags tell stories and banners get attention. Whether it's for your business, organization, or special event, custom flags and banners will make your message soar. Visit flagandbanner.com for high quality, quick turnaround. We're not just any flag company, we're the experts that answer the phone.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with Mr. Walt Coleman III, retired NFL referee, and the fifth-generation owner-operator of Coleman Dairy, now called Hiland Dairy. So before the break, we talked about, at the very beginning of the show, we talked about Coleman Dairy starting in 1862. Then we moved on to the NFL. Then we played a game about a one-word association with some of his players that he's refereed or officiated in games with. And so for the last, I think I already know the answer to this, but is it passion for the game or the money that makes a person want to do that job for so long? NFL, is it passion?
It's the passion. It's the passion for the game. What it takes to get there. I've got to be honest. The money became somewhat significant after I had been in the league a long time. When I first got in, it was $600 a game, 15 games, $9,000.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't do it for that.
It's what I made to travel, all over the United States. Now they paid for your travel and all that, but I mean that's what I got. So I mean it became much more lucrative over that.
For the players and everybody.
Yeah, so you don't get involved with all that, for the money. It became nice, but it was the passion. It's being involved. I mean, at some point you get to where you can't play. You can't play anymore. And this was officiating was a way for me to stay involved in sports and athletics and being out there on that field and getting that same feeling of being involved. Plus, you're helping, at least at the high school and college level. I mean, you're helping people do what they've dreamed to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, the greatest thing in the world is on a Friday night that those high school kids getting to go out there and do that and play football. I mean, so that's why there's a shortage of officials. And
there is.
Oh yes, because who wants to do that? I mean, who wants to drive
work 7 days a week?
Who wants to drive for 30 minutes or an hour or so forth for $60 and be abused for 3 hours? I mean,
it's the love of the game. It's the passion.
Yes, and so, but the being involved for me was the big thing, and nothing. I mean, and I worked some huge, football games in my lifetime, but nothing gave me more happiness than it was working a Friday night football game with those kids out there. Because I just remember what it was like when I was playing high school football and how important it was and what it meant as far as to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So
you watch a lot of games now that you're retired?
Yeah, because I like football.
You watch it all the time?
I mean, football to me is, it's the...
Do you rewatch games?
No.
My husband does.
No.
He rewatches games all the time.
Really?
Yes,
now,
on his phone.
Now, I do drive my wife crazy by going backwards, during the game and go back and watch plays and you get behind,
Well, I like that because then you can skip the commercials.
So anyway, but yeah, so I watched a lot more football in the past and even last year than I will this year because my son was in the NFL.
What?
My son was in the NFL for 8 seasons, but he decided after last season that he didn't want to be away.
What position?
He was a line judge for 8 years. He worked 2 playoff games, but he didn't want to be away from it. He's got a boy 9 and one 7, and they live in Texas and they play hockey, and their hockey games are on Sundays. And last year they played 48 hockey games, and he saw 2.
Oh.
And he decided that his boys were more important than being involved.
There's that little window of opportunity. They're only home for a little while.
That's exactly.
He could probably go back.
So anyway, I watched a lot because I watched all his games. I mean, obviously, I watched every one of his games. I had to critique him.
Well, sure you did.
Because he critiqued me, his whole life.
Yeah, sure you did.
So I had to critique him. So, but I still love watching football. I mean, I watched the games last night. I love watching college football.
I like college.
I'm gonna be at the Razorback game.
Are you?
On Saturday.
Pig soon. Yep,
so
there you go.
But I'm a Razorback fan. That's what fans would ask me. Who is your favorite team?
Well, would you know where I'm from?
And so who's your favorite? Well, they think I'm going to say some NFL team.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
so I would say the Razorbacks. And then they'd say, no, I'm talking about your NFL team.
So who is your favorite NFL team?
I don't have one.
Oh, there you go. Good referee answer.
Yes, I don't have a favorite NFL team. No, I don't. I didn't follow the NFL. I followed.
You worked in it.
I followed the Razorbacks.
Yeah. All right. Here's your parting gift. Thank you, Walt. I've enjoyed it. You get a desk set for your U.S. and Arkansas flag for your desk, and we're going to get your flagpole out there at Coleman Dairy.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive by and look at it and see where we can put it. To our listeners, I want to thank you in closing for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening, and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy, and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. Until then, be brave and keep it up.
If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the picture in the center of the screen. For more of Kerry's interviews, click either video on the right of the screen. And as always, thank you for watching.